Job seekers, you can upload your resume, view job postings, and research labor market information at employflorida.com. And once again, welcome back to Job Hunting 101. My name is Dale Green. I'm joined by Phyllis and Terry. You've joined the program. We thank you for joining today. We're going to go back in time, I'm not going to say how much time, to talk about our first experiences, our business casual jobs, and we'll bring that fast forward to what's happening in today's society, albeit with the information superhighway and that sort of thing. Terry, can you tell us about what you wore on your first job and how what went into the decision, whether you were a teenager or just maybe a college internship or what have you?
Sure. And thank you. That's very kind of you to not go back in time.
Right.
Not specify the time.
Right.
So yeah, actually, yeah, business casual was definitely my look. I worked in, I've not always been in HR, not always thought I wanted to do HR, which is what I do now. So my first job was actually in the clothing store. So I worked for Liz Claiborne, very early. I was still a student, and I worked there just to get the clothes. So, I wanted to use all of my paycheck and buy clothes. So when I went to interview, knowing that I was interviewing, I took in consideration what industry that I was walking into and what I wanted to become a part of. So I made sure that I represented what Liz Claiborne represented as a brand, and I made sure that that I was professional, but didn't want to overdo it, because it's not like it was an office environment. It was a store. It was a department store.
Have you ever had an interview where you had some regrets in terms of what you wore?
Yes, actually I have. One of the things that when you look at the world, I worked in the finance world before I moved into HR. And I remember wearing a dress and a jacket that was very pretty, but maybe not as professional as it should have been. I felt very good in it. However, the world that I was entering into was more, as we described earlier, the suit, which was the blacks, the browns, the blues, and I didn't. I went in more of a brighter color. It was actually it was a red, but it was a very dull looking red. And I thought it would be fine, but it wasn't. And I knew, I could feel it immediately when I walked in. And one of the most important things is whatever you're wearing, you need to be comfortable in it. And I did not, because I knew that I was different than everyone else that I was interviewing with.
And that perhaps may have affected your persona in your interview process.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
it does.
Sure. Phyllis, other than working, being tapped, being assigned, being designated to work in your father's restaurant, outside of the restaurant, your very first job, can you recall maybe what happened on your first experience?
I can, Dale. First of all, it was in Houston, Texas.
Wow.
And so different environment than what I'm in today. And I went for this interview with one job in mind, specifically. It was with an oil company, so I started out my career in the oil business, ended up getting a very different job because they thought that I would be good for the human resources department. So I went in looking for a word processing job, was dressed to get a word processing job, so I wasn't dressed as professionally as I maybe should have been for the HR position that they ultimately gave me. But I guess you would say today it would be equated to our business casual is the way that I went in there. So in that particular instance, I guess for me, what came out of my mouth and the interview itself was something that told them I had skills that they wanted to utilize in the HR department.
Any regrets about something that you may have worn in a subsequent job that you wish you could have taken back?
Well, I will tell you there is one, and it wasn't in an interview process, so I hope that's good, because I do think they're still learning here. One of my favorite suits is a pink and white suit. It's beautiful. And I wore that when I first met with our current CEO at Raymond James, and I could feel in the room, I was in the room with him and another person, and I was not at my best because I knew that I didn't look like I fit in. So the lessons learned there is that whether it's in an interview or after you get the job, you have to understand the culture, you have to understand the expectations of the business, because all businesses are different. And then you really do have to dress, if you want to be successful, the way the culture indicates that you should.
Interesting point, because I guess if you look on the website, how they're dressed on the website that's their brand. That's who they are.
You're right.
I remember seeing a guy over in Clearwater at, I think it was a Kiwanis or Optimist Club, and he came from Hawaii, and he was a guest optimist at the luncheon, at the monthly luncheon, and he didn't have on a tie or anything like that. He was dressed in the attire that they wear on the island, one of the islands of Hawaii. And I want to just relay a story of mine. I waited tables in the summers in Indiana. I grew up in Tallahassee, and I went to see, I passed by this hotel a lot under construction, the Sheraton Hotel. And I just happened to work at the Sheraton in French Lick, Indiana, at a resort. Okay. So I kept passing by, and I saw the manager, I saw somebody sitting out back there, and I pulled sitting out front, and I pulled the bus cord, got off the bus, and I said, I introduced myself, and I said, I'm a full-time student who's looking for a part-time job. And that's the hidden job market. But I had on the attire that they wear, that I wore in Indiana, and the yellow jackets in Indiana with the short ones. Here they wore the red jackets. So whether you're in uniform or out of uniform, there's something that is to be said for, again, as we said in the first segment, making that very first impression.
Yes.
Exactly.
Can't do it enough. What are some of the things that people should stay away from, men and women in turn? We talked about the scent of the cologne, which can remind one of one's former significant other.
I think one example that I'd like to share, and this happened actually in an interview that I did within the last 6 months, but the individual came in with open-toe shoes, which for me is a no-no in an interview. But worse than that, the toenail polish was brilliant blue.
Oh.
And immediately, I mean, it was hard for me to proceed with the interview because that stopped me. And I will tell you, we went through a shorter interview than I normally would go through. And I discounted the person as a result of it because I thought that was not good judgment coming into an interview.
Wow. Speaking of that, speaking of blue, sky blue, there was a bank executive who once said a young lady came in to get a customer service position. True story. She's now the branch bank, easier for you to say, branch bank manager, you know what I mean. Okay, the manager of the bank. And the lady came in, the applicant came in with a child. It wasn't her child. She didn't have any children. It was like 7, 8-year-old child. And the branch manager came out and said, ma'am, you're not ready for the interview today. Go ahead, and she suggested what she should do. She came back the next day, did not have the child, and wore that conservative gray and got the job and has been working at the bank ever since. So I think that's a pretty good situation. Terry, if somebody came into one of the front brand products of one of the front brand stores, or in your case, the vice president of people, and they came in dressed in a outfit that, like what I did at the hotel, sort of somewhat to the uniform. And they were an everyday hourly person who gets tips. What about that? Is that acceptable? Not a manager or an assistant manager.
It really is.
Okay.
It's okay. It shows that you have done enough research, that you understand what the look is, you know, for the restaurants, and you understand what you need to represent. So it's okay. You know, business casual is fine for those. I think it's just the effort that you put into ensuring that your clothing is properly pressed, ensuring that your clothing is or dry cleaned, whichever one it is, and that it just makes a nice presentation. I think that's important.
Right. What are some of the things we should not wear? You can start anywhere you want. I mean, other than the cologne, the open-toe shoes. We talked about not having the cell phone as an accessory because, or the earpiece. That's all about what you wear. Men shouldn't wear hats.
That's correct.
Right,
No
right.
hats, no sneakers, no T-shirts.
But this is Florida. This is the subtropics.
It is.
But
You're
this
right.
is an interview.
This is an interview.
So that's
yeah.
the difference. I think also, you know, for women, low plunging blouses, short, tight skirts, that's just not demonstrating good judgment to go into an interview. I would even carry it as far as to say a suit that doesn't fit. Now, I know that may sound harsh, but you know, you have somebody that comes in and the suit is just pulling and tight, and to me that just doesn't show good judgment as well.
Right. It makes one wonder, the interviewer wonder who are they trying to impress in terms of I work out, and I have a nice body, nice physique, or am I trying to get the job and impress you with some skills and skill sets that I have?
Well, and as I said before, when the woman came in with the open-toe shoes, that first impression was such that I didn't do a good interview with her because I'd already ruled her out.
Wow.
I made that type of judgment call.
Right. Something else one wears, I have a clipboard here. Maybe I should have brought a portfolio and had a nice, whether I paid $5.95 or $55.95. If I open it up, I can, thumb through my pages. How important, because that's all part of your dress, things you bring in. I have my resume and I have some references and that sort of thing. What should I wear?
I encourage you to bring, you made a good point, I encourage you to bring a resume. Even though they may have a resume that you have sent in electronically or if they've downloaded off of the internet, it's important to bring another copy. And it's nice, it's good to have it on good paper, because that again is a representation of you. But as far as the portfolio or a briefcase, either are acceptable, as long as they are, they're like a black in nature or brown or, and they're just very subtle. I would not bring in something that has neon colors on it or that has it really stands out, that really draws attention to that away from you. The thing that you want to do is dress and bring any accessories with you that don't take attention from you, that you want the interviewer to focus on you and what you have to bring to the table.
Right. Phyllis, I'll just ask you this. In your arena, if somebody had a briefcase and had a keychain attached to it with all these keys and a cell phone, what does that say? Isn't that what we mean by too much baggage?
Well, let me address the briefcase first, because I think when I see that, and every now and then we do see it, to me that is overkill in regards to an interview, because frankly there isn't any reason to bring a briefcase into an interview. Now, portfolios, absolutely, I agree with Terry on that. I think, in fact, to me it's necessary, because first of all, I'd like to see people open it up. I'm hoping that they have questions that they've documented in their portfolio that they can reference. I ask a lot of questions. I want to know, I ask them about their research and what they've done to know more about Raymond James. And so to me, that's the purpose of that portfolio. For them, it's to guide them. It's their script, if you will. Because as you all know, we have to prep before we go into an interview. And I know that's probably the subject of another part of this series, but that's very important. And to the keys and the cell phone, it just is inexcusable.
Cell phone is off, but it's still dangling there in a bright neon polka dot color.
It's a distraction, and not necessary.
Right, and I think as Terry mentioned, and I'm glad you did cover that, not only if you don't know whether you're going to be interviewed by one person or several people.
That's right.
Have copies of your resume. I think one of the worst things to do is to say, listen, I have 5 copies of the resume, but there are 7 people. Say, can you make me a copy? No, that's not being prepared.
It's not at all.
Exactly.
In terms of what you wear, part of what you wear in terms of your follow-up, should I get a thank you card from one of the major card stores? I'll just say Hallmark, American Greetings, or should I say it in my own words in terms of following up with a thank you card?
It's much better when you say it in your own words. There are nice thank you cards out there that just have thank you on the front, turn it inside. You can say exactly what you want. It's showing your sentiments, which shows how well you write. It's a good representation of your ability to write a nice thank you note. I would definitely write it myself.
Right, but you should be the human spell check. Right?
Right, and I would just piggyback on that. I think in this day and age of technology, I think a lot of people presume that it's okay to send an email. But to Terry's point, I mean, it is so much more important for that hiring manager to have a physical note from you that first of all, it's a reminder of you. And not everyone's going to do it. So you're going to stand out if you do send them a note. And then with regard to the technology, you can get lost in many emails. And if they don't, they may have interviewed 10 candidates for that job. They may not even know your name. So the physical note is quite appropriate. And I concur that, just a thank you and you write it in your own words, because that will mean something to them.
Right. I'm so old school that I think in the case of Mr. Willis back to the hotel, I sent him a postcard. Because I wanted to make sure that it was postmarked that day. The other thing, I did it on purpose, that so that when he got it, he could see that, well, everybody gets it, and everybody can see it, I should say. The secretary, the mail person, and they can all see, oh, I mean, you have a nice little, and that sort of puts you out there on Front Street. The emails do get lost in today's society.
Oh, yes, they do. And you're right about the postcard, because it's not something that that
It's
has to
out of
be
the box.
opened by this person.
Sure,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
out of
you're
the
right.
box.
Other people can read it. The other thing I want to add to that is, don't just send one. Send it to all of the people that you interviewed with. Don't just send one to the primary contact person, because you need to show that respect to all the people that you interviewed with.
We'll talk about maybe at another show, another time in this series, about what to put on there, because it should be in your own words. We're enjoying our conversation here with these two HR professionals here on this series of Job Hunting 101. We'll be back with more of our program very shortly.